So let's import our palm textures. I'm going to browse to the digital asset library, trees, African, palm, and I copied these bark and leaves textures over from the SpeedTree folder. So whenever you install SpeedTree, these textures will come with it, which is kind of cool. So you can just copy them over from the SpeedTree folder. So let's jump into the bark. We'll grab all of those, load them in. We'll load in the leaves as well. I think I'll leave behind the opacity and the normal map. Let's start off with the bark. Just going to line these up a little bit better. Let's get rid of that normal one. We're not going to convert the normal. And the first thing we're going to do is drop down an OCIO color space node. And if any of this confuses you, I've got a course out called Mastering ACES Color Space, which is free. So I definitely recommend checking that out. So the input will be utility sRGB texture, and the output will be ACES-CG. And you can see in this case that the output is extremely dark. It's way too dark. So what I do is I drop down a grade node before the OCIO color space node. I'm just grading that up. And what I do is I view from the grade here. And as I'm gaining, I'm sort of thinking how this would look in a photo in real life, sort of in a nice well-lit environment. And that seems to be decent. So I wouldn't pump this up too much to that level, because that's obviously too bright. So I'd sort of lift this up to around there. So it's a little bit more sensible. So if I hit D on the grade, we can see the result. Then we view from the color space node, and that seems to be looking a lot better. Also, one thing about this texture that I'm not particularly fond of is the green. I can see a fair amount of green here. So I'm just going to drop that green back ever so slightly, like that. And then we're going to view from here. Nice. Okay, so onto the height. So we're seeing the red channel right now. Let's drop down a shuffle node. And we're just going to pipe all of this into the red. Let's mix it white. We'll take a color We'll take a color space node, paste it down. So going from here to here, that's looking fine. Yep, that looks okay. We'll do the same for the roughness map. And you can see we've got the exact same problem. So I'll take the grade node again before the shuffle. So we're grading that up. Actually, we'll put it after the shuffle. And you can still see we're way too dark there. And in 3D software packages, 0 or black is completely shiny or fully glossy, and 1 is 100% rough. So you can see here we're insanely glossy based on the luminance value of this map. So we can just grade this up. I think there's something around 8. Something around there. That's looking a little bit better. And then we can sort of remap those values in Redshift. So that's looking all right. Let's move on to the leaves. So the diffuse texture, that's looking like a much more natural image. So the exposure seems to be right there. Let's copy the color space node, paste it. Yep, the result is looking as expected, so there's no need to grade that image up. The opacity we brought in, remove it. I'm not sure why that got imported. Glossiness map, we'll do exactly the same. We'll grab this, paste it there. It's looking very shiny, so we can grade this up, lift those white levels to around here. That's looking okay. We've got a height map. Just copy and paste those. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. We have our subsurface. That seems to be at a much better level. And the output, once we've converted, seems more sensible as well. The subsurface amount. I'll copy these. And it looks very, very dark. And also this map is the wrong way around. So this map controls the subsurface amount, so the amount of light that penetrates the leaf. And currently where there's white, that's where the light is coming through. And on a leaf, this would be the opposite. So the stem wouldn't receive that much subsurface and the leaf would receive more because it's thinner. So we need to invert this map here. So we do an invert, grade that down. Something like there. I think that's looking a lot better. You can even just adjust this just a little bit. Something like that to give that a little bit more contrast. Yeah, that's looking okay. Okay, so once we've done all of that, I'm going to drop a right node down. We're going to browse to the bark folder. So in here, and I'm going to create another folder called aces CG. And we're going to dump this in there. So let's say palm meadow underscore bark underscore 2 underscore aces CG .exr. Just make sure we're rendering out EXRs from here. I would usually tick this right aces compliant EXR, which sort of forces a 16-bit half float and it turns off the compression, but that also increases the file size, so I'm going to leave that off. Make sure the color space is set to aces CG and we're going to hit render. And then I'm going to let you guys do the rest of those. So all you do is just copy and paste this, rename the file to, height and so on, and just keep rendering them out. And I'll see you guys once you've done that. So I've converted all those textures, and you can see that that does take a little bit of time to do, and it's not the most fun task. So one thing that is hopefully coming to Redshift is the OCIO color space node, which allows you to convert your textures in the 3D software package, which is insanely quicker. So if you type in OCIO transform, this does exist, but it doesn't work for Redshift. It works for Mantra in Houdini. And you do exactly the same here. So you'd be saying utility, let's have a look, utility sRGB texture, if I can find it, to aces CG, and this would work. So you plug your texture into here and then this into the Redshift material. But unfortunately that doesn't exist right now, so we have to convert our textures in Nuke beforehand. So whilst we're on the topic of texture conversion, let's import our HDRI that we're going to use. So I go to E, Digital Assets Library, HDRIs, and I'm going to use a HDRI that I downloaded from textures.com. And I think they offer a free 2K version, so you can pick that up. So once I've loaded this in, I'm going to make sure the color space is set to utility linear sRGB this time. And that's because this HDRI has already been linearized. Okay, so from here, I'm going to drop down an OCIO color space node. This is a very, very large image, which is completely unnecessary for most lighting scenarios. So I'm just going to say to scale here, and I'm just going to scale this down to about, I don't know, something like 2.5K. We just don't need all that resolution. It's also going to impact our render times if the HDRIs are too large in resolution. And like I said, I find in most cases I never need to go above sort of a 2 or 3K HDRI map. You're just wasting resources. Okay, so at this point we say the input is utility linear sRGB, not utility sRGB texture, because the HDRI has been linearized. And then we'll drop down a right node. In that same folder, I'm going to create another folder called Aces CG, and we're going to drop it in there. So I'm going to say 179 underscore HDRI skies underscore aces cg.exr, and I'll make sure the color space is set to aces CG, and I'll hit render. Cool.